It's a little loud. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Prajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Prajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tiravanachari. Jamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajakacarya Ashtottara Tadashi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajakacarya Ashtottara Tadashi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavin Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 14th day of August 2023 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in Canto 6, Prescribed Duties for Mankind, Chapter 17, Mother Parvati curses Chitraketu, Text 22. Na tasya kaschid dayatah patipo na gyati bandhur na paro na cha swaha samasya sarvatra niranjanasya sukhe naragaha kuta evaroshaha natasya kaschindayatak pratipo na gyati bandhu na pado na chapsvaha samasya sarvatna naranjanasya sukhe naraga kuta eva roshaha. Okay, could someone close that side door for me? It's a little cold, right over there, right there. Natasya kaschin dayatak pratipo na gyati bandhu na paro na chasvaha samasya sarvatna niranjanasya sukhe naraga kuta eva roshaha natasya kaschin dayatak pratipo na gyati bandhu na paro na chasvaha samasya sarvatna niranjanasya sukhe naraga kuta eva roshaha. Natasya kaschin dayatak pratipo na gyati bandhu na pado na chasvaha samasya sarvatna niranjanasya sukhe naraga kuta eva roshaha. Natasya kaschin dayatak pratipo na gyati bandhu na paro na chasvaha samasya sarvatna niranjanasya sukhe naraga kuta eva roshaha. Natasya kaschin dayatak pratipo na gyati bandhu na paro na chasvaha samasya sarvatna niranjanasya sukhe naraga kuta eva roshaha. Natasya kaschin dayatak pratipo na gyati bandhu na paro na chasvaha samasya sarvatna niranjanasya kuta eva raga kuta eva roshaha. Okay. Na, not. Tasya, of him, the Supreme Lord. Kaschit, anyone. Dayataha, dear. Patipaha, not dear. Na, nor. Gyati, kinsman. Bandhu, friend. Na, nor. Paraha, other. Na, nor. Cha, also. Swaha, own. Samasya, who is equal. Sarvatra, everywhere. Niranjanasya, without being affected by material nature. Sukhe, in happiness. Naha, na, not. Ragaha, attachment. Kutaha, from where? Eva, indeed. Roshaha, anger. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is equally disposed toward all living entities. Therefore, no one is very dear to him, and no one is a great enemy for him. No one is his friend, and no one is his relative. Being unattached to the material world, he has no affection for so-called happiness or hatred for so-called distress. The two terms happiness and distress are relative. Since the Lord is always happy, for him there is no question of distress. No purport. I'll chant the next one myself. Tatapi tat chakti visaga esham sukhaya dukkaya hitaya bandaya mokshaya cha mrityu janmano sharirinam sangsritiye vakalpate. Translation. Although the Supreme Lord is unattached to our happiness and distress according to karma, and although no one is his enemy or favorite, he creates pious and impious activities through the agency of his material potency. Thus, for the continuation of the materialistic way of life, he creates happiness and distress, good fortune and bad, bondage and liberation, birth and death. Purport. Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate doer of everything, in his original transcendental existence, he is not responsible for the happiness and distress, or bondage and liberation, of the conditioned souls. These are due to the results of the fruit of activities of the living entities within this material world. By the order of a judge, one person is released from jail, and another is imprisoned. But the judge is not responsible for the distress and happiness of these different people is due to their own activities. Although the government is ultimately the supreme authority, the justice is administered by the departments of the government, and the government is not responsible for the individual judgments. Therefore, the government is equal to all the citizens. This is, of course, an ideal government. It's really a government. Therefore, the government is equal to all the citizens. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is neutral to everyone. But for the maintenance of law and order, his supreme government has various departments which control the activities of the living entities. Another example given in this regard is that lilies open or close because of the sunshine, and thus the bumblebees enjoy or suffer. But the sunshine and the sun globe are not responsible for the happiness and distress of the bumblebees. Interesting. Om jnanatimirandasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshu unmilitam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession.
Can you please repeat the last sentence about the bumblebee?
Yes, I can do that, Maharaj. All right, let's see. Another example. Another example given in this regard is that lilies open or close because of the sunshine, and thus the bumblebees enjoy or suffer. But the sunshine and the sun globe are not responsible for the happiness and distress of the bumblebees. Okay.
So the bumblebees suffer because it is close.
Can't do anything. Yeah. They're suffering because they're bumblebees. They've taken the body of bumblebees, so that's all. Okay, so we started on 22. So this is Lord Shiva glorifying devotees in general, and Maharaj and Chitraketu in particular. And the whole theme here is how one who's truly a pure devotee is transcendental to the dualities of this material world. And this comes up again and again. In the Bhagavad Gita, we find at the end of chapter 2, how can one become truly peaceful? There's a whole little section there. And one of the verses goes like this, Vihaya karma nyaksarvan pumam chadradi nikspaha nirmamo nadahankara sashantim adigachati. Let me see if I can get the... Anyway, the idea is that one who has given up material desires, vihaya kama niksarvam, puma, and lives free of desire, doesn't have any sense of ownership or proprietorship over anything in this world, including his own body and his own self. He belongs to Krishna. Nirmamo nadahankara, and thus he's finished with the false ego. He has real ego. You can't give up the ego, the sense of self. Real ego, I'm eternal servant of Krishna. Sashanti madhigacchati. This is where real peace resides. And in another verse in that same section, Krishna uses the analogy of the ocean, which is very appropriate for us. We're sitting next to the Pacific Ocean, which means peaceful, the peaceful ocean. Now, of course, sometimes there's a lot of storms, as we know. But basically, it's more peaceful in the Atlantic, so they call it the Pacific Ocean. And the analogy is that, and the river, all these rivers are flowing into the Pacific Ocean, not only from the United States, from wherever it is all around the Pacific Rim. But the ocean remains Pacific. In other words, those rivers are insignificant compared to the breadth and the volume of the ocean. So similarly, so many desires or stimulation for desires, may flow into the mind of a pure devotee due to the senses, but it remains peaceful. It's just like these rivers flowing into the Pacific Ocean. Whereas for the conditioned soul, when he sees a man sees a beautiful woman, then there's some response there, like desire. You may not be able to get it, but it disturbs you. You're not peaceful, And similarly, so many things. I like to give the analogy, not the analogy, but the example. We used to go on Harinam in Philadelphia when I lived there. And we go downtown, and there was a big square that had been free of vehicular traffic, kind of like Santa Monica Mall or the Promenade. And there were all these businesses and one of them was a bakery. And they would pump out the fragrance, I especially remember, chocolate chip cookies into the square. And whoa, as soon as you smell those chocolate chip cookies, you want to go and buy them and eat them, right? But devotees were on Harinam and think, they're not offered or anything, so the desire isn't there. In other words, it's cut off. And because you're relatively absorbed in Krishna consciousness through the holy name. Similar thing happened a few years ago when we went down on New Year's Eve, big Harinam downtown in the gas lamp district right here. And there's people who come to that gas lamp district only on that night, So it's full. There's a lot of people there. Now they finally, we went down for the Comic-Con, they block off that main avenue, Fifth Avenue, so there's a pedestrian walk, But it wasn't like that. The sidewalks were very crowded, So I'm leading the kirtan, come up. And we came up to the corner, and there were a whole, a gaggle of ladies who were dressed just for, New Year's Eve. They weren't that dressed, let me put it that way. And, we're chanting, and they're just waiting to cross, they weren't doing anything, but just the way they were dressed, you could see was provocative. But you're chanting Hare Krishna, it doesn't register. You're absorbed in the holy name and everything, like that. So, pure devotees are always in that state. They're always in that state. They can't be agitated. Now, this is a wonderful example because Chetraketu, recall when he was, I mentioned this before, but there's some new people here. When he was totally agitated, it's disturbed no end by, first of all, not being able to have a son. He had millions of wives, and none of them get pregnant. So, and he's a king, and he was a devotee, but he was not a pure devotee at that point. But he couldn't tolerate not having a son. So Angira Muni comes down. I don't think he came down with Narada the first time, right? And he saw he wasn't ready to receive the transcendental instruction at this point. So he gave him a blessing that, was it giving some milk to his wife? Sometimes they do it that way. So his favorite wife said, you'll have a son now. And sure enough, she got pregnant and had this wonderful little boy, And so he was overjoyed. Now, finally, I have an heir, the king, and a wonderful little child, So in his, naturally, he became much more favored toward that queen. The other queens, millions of queens who, hadn't been able, were now ignored more or less. They became overwhelmed with envy and hatred and anger, and they poisoned the child. And so he was whipped from, and so he asked Angara for the name of the child. He said, it's a Harsha Shoka, jubilation, lamentation, So he didn't take it so seriously because, many children, they grow up, boys, they grow up, they're going to cause some angst for the parents, But that was very prophetic. So he was jubilant at the child, and he was in the depths of despair when the child was killed. Even much more than before he could get the child. So in that state, Angira comes back with Narada Muni. And they give him some transcendental instruction, and even more dramatically, they bring the child back to life. So he then tells, who is really my mother? I've had so many different mothers and fathers, And so the child himself is breaking the attachment. So with all of that, then Chitraketu is ready to receive transcendental instructions, and he does from Narada Muni, and he gives him a wonderful mantra, which he chants very seriously for only 7 days, and he gets a darshan of Sankirtan. Then he offers these wonderful prayers to Sankirtan, and he retires from the kingdom, everything, and he goes flying in his airplane. The Advajatas or something. It describes he's with all these ladies, but they're enjoying. How is he enjoying? Glorifying the Lord. So he goes on like that. And then we come to this episode here where he sees Shiva and Parvati, and he makes this, by the arrangement of Krishna, he says, this is not proper, this is Shiva with Parvati on his lap, surrounded by all of these wonderful sages, this is Rasabhasa or whatever. So then he gets cursed from Parvati. But it doesn't bother him. He doesn't like fall out of his airplane. He doesn't lament it. He doesn't recurse, or he could negate the curse. He accepts it, just like Parikshit accepted it. Now it's interesting that there's a parallel there, more than just Parikshit accepting and sitting down, and receiving the Bhagavatam. And that is that what happened with Parikshit, it was completely out of character. Never before had he insulted a Brahmin. The story, he's wandering in the forest, and they do that sometimes, hunting, and he got very, very tired, very, very thirsty, and he came upon this little ashram of Shamika Rishi, I think his name is, and he was meditating. And this is not, this happens several times in the Bhagavatam, where the meditating sage doesn't respect the visitor in its incident. So he's in samadhi, and Maharaj, this is the king of the world after all, so he should have been received and offered, some water, a place to sit at least, simple. But he didn't get that. So uncharacteristically, instead of recognizing the situation and moving on, he took a dead snake which was near the hut, and he put it around the shoulders of Shamika Rishi. And then he went back. And I think as he was going back, he was also thinking, oh, what have I done, what have I done? So then his son, named Shringi, who had Brahminical qualifications, he had the power of a Brahmin, but he didn't have any discrimination. And it's described there that this is kind of the beginning of Kali Yuga, where the Brahmins start getting degraded, So Shringi became furious at the king, as a little boy, but he had the power to curse. And he cursed him to die in 7 days by a bite of a snake bird. Talk about unproportional reaction, a little insult, and he deposes the king of the world, wonderful king. So King Parikshit had the power to negate the curse as a pure devotee and so forth. But he didn't. He accepted it as arrangement of Krishna. And what did he do? He sat down by the Ganges to hear Bhagavatam, and Shukadeva Goswami comes, the greatest hearer and the greatest speaker of Bhagavatam, and we're benefiting from it here. Right? The Bhagavatam was spoken, Sutta Goswami was in the audience, he heard it, and in those days, somebody had Shrutidhar, he could hear the whole thing, 18,000 verses, and memorize them. We have trouble memorizing verses, we repeat it again and again, and then look at the synonyms, You imagine 18,000 verses like that. So anyway, there's a nice parallel, and it's a lesson. So here, Shiva is describing the glories of the devotees, and at a certain point in his little discourse here, he chants a very memorable verse that Prabhupada often quoted. Narayana paraksarve, Narayana paraksarve, nakutashchana bibbiti, svarga pavarganadakesha pitulyarta darshanam. Translation. Devotees solely engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, Narayan, never fear any condition of life. For them, the heavenly planets, liberation, and the hellish planets are all the same. For such devotees are interested only in the service of the Lord. And I think this has come up before, but it's worth repeating. That Prabhupada was once asked, I think by one of his devotees, what do you feel when you chant Hare Krishna? Prabhupada immediately answered, fearlessness. I feel fearless. And you realize, when you contemplate our material life, how incredible that is. There's so many things that cause anxiety, sometimes terror, sometimes just like, low fear becomes chronic, depression, everything. All of those, it's all because of identification with the mind and the body. You see? But if you're transcendental to that, then you can go through life on this even platform. This comes up in the teachings of Kapila Dev to his mother. Practically he begins with these 8 verses, very key verses. Prabhupada gave wonderful lectures on these in Bombay, in the middle of that whole struggle to get to Bombay, and he brings that into the talk. It's very, very enlightening. So there's 8 verses that begin with this verse, Prasangam madadam pasham atmana kabayo vadu natejas sarashukato moksha dvaram aparvatam. That, which means, put in a little poem, mundane affection keeps us bound to birth and death infernal, but love for sadhus opens wide the doors to life eternal. You see? So this word prasanga is very important. It comes up in a few verses after this, in his famous verse, Satam prasangam mama virya samvida. So at Prabhupada sometimes he would give a little phrase describing what this means. The prefix pra intensifies the word. In other words, it's like conscious and superconscious. Super is so prasanga means in this context very strong attachment, which we have for so many things in this world. Prasangam ajadam pasham, which these attachments act as very powerful ropes, strong ropes that keep us bound to this material world. Ajadam pasham, atmana kavayo vidu. The kavi is the wise persons understand that this very strong attachment has to be redirected toward what? Toward the sadhus. Everything is personal ultimately in Krishna consciousness. It's not the Brahman in general, no, to sadhus, who are, of course, devotees. And the next verse, well, who are the sadhus? Titikshava karunika suridak sarvadehinam ajata shattabhakshanta sadhavak sarabhushana. This is the first in a series of verses, 3 or 4 verses, describing who the sadhus are and what they're like. And it's exactly what we're reading here. So the first thing is tolerant, the tolerance, and karunika. The next one is merciful. If you're going to be compassionate, that means to whom? To the conditioned soul. So you go out there and you got to tolerate so much. Ask any book distributor. I'm sure in that Vijay's book, there's 100 stories of how tolerant you have to be in order to be successful. Prabhupada would give the example of Jesus Christ. Forgive them, Father. They know not what they are doing. He would quote that, So, Suridak Sarvadehinam means the friend of every living entity, even the animals, not just human beings, but the cows, everyone, with every conditioned soul, even the trees, you don't cut them down unless it's absolutely necessary. Sodidaksa ajata shattavat. This is brought up. This is the quality of Yudhishthira. It means the enemy is never born. So in English, it kind of is puzzling. Yudhishthira doesn't have an enemy? He's on the battlefield. He's fighting his battle. How is that going? They see him with an enmity. But he, even though he's fighting, he doesn't hate them. He doesn't have the enmity. He's doing it as a matter of duty, And so Ajatashat, and because he has no enemy, he has no enmity toward anyone, and is completely and tolerant and merciful and very peaceful. Because they have no material desires. Vihaya kama nyaksam puma. That was the verse at the end of the Bhagavad, near the end of the second chapter. It comes up several times. To really get peace, you have to transcend all the material desires. Because those material desires are what make your mind unpeaceful. Oh, I don't have this, and then I get it, and I lost it, right? Kankshati, shochati, kankshati. Hankering, and you get it, then you lose it, you know. This is the material world, ever-changing. So if you're identifying with these ever-changing desires and opportunities and on the material platform, you can never be peaceful. So the pure devotee is peaceful because he has no material desires. And Shanta, Sadhavak Sadhabhushana, these are the ornaments of a sadhu. And one of them there is also that he abides by the scripture that's mentioned at the end. So, but the interesting thing about this verse, it doesn't mention that he's devotee. Next verse, how do you become a sadhu? Kapila Dev speaking, an incarnation of Krishna, Maya Ananyena Bhavena, Bhaktim Kurvanti Yedudam, Tapandi Vadastaban Naitarman Gata Chaitasa. And this verse is very pertinent to our present verses in the Bhagavatam, which are after all describing how Chitraketu is so tolerant despite being cursed to become a demon and so forth. And that follows through all the way to the end of his story, the end of his history, which we read in the past chapter. This is like a flashback, that we're reading right now. Of the tolerance of Vidrasara, who had to act like a demon, even though he's not a demon, right? He had to act like a demon and provoke Indra and even, fight with him and as if he wants to kill him. While really he wants to be killed by him. Get rid of this demon body and go back to Godhead. And that was the plan. And it worked. First of all, Krishna is all arranging that plan also. What did he tell? You remember what he told the demigods to do when they lost their kingdom to the demons? They were now evicted, so they went and they prayed to Krishna, please help us get our kingdom back. So he told them to go to the Dichi, beg him his body so he can take his bones and make this invincible thunderbolt for Indra, right? So it's pretty gruesome, right? It's not like they didn't go to Krishna and beg for pure devotion. This is what a pure devotee begs for. No, so they get this thing. And so the Dichi was first joking with him, no, I can't give you my body. So then he gave him the body. They made the thunderbolt. And so Indra was very powerful from that. But still, it was battle. You remember the battle back and forth. So anyway, in that body of Vitrasara, it was the same Chitraketu. And so he was still very tolerant. He still had no enmity. But he had to act the part of the demon in order to get Indra to kill him and liberate him from the body. That's really what's happened. And he reveals himself. You remember those prayers? The prayers of Vitrasara? They're often quoted. I remember Jayaweda Swami came here once and gave a lecture on those prayers, at least a couple of them. It was a wonderful talk. So anyway, Chitraketu Vidrasara, he goes back to Godhead. And what happens to Indra? His sinful reactions are coming after him in the form of this tubercular woman. You remember that? I think it's this lady with it. And he's running. So he hides in Bindu Sarovar or some big lake, and he's got to breathe through a straw so he can't find him for 1,000 years or something. So he doesn't go back to Godhead, Indra. He's killed 2 Brahmins. Vitrasara is a Brahmin. He's the son of Tvashta. He invoked him. Plus his brother, really, Vishwarup, remember? So anyway, that's the story. So this is the same thing as here. Chitraketu, this is before he becomes a demon. He's put into a situation by Krishna so that he can come back to Godhead earlier. And this is all part of the story. But there's so many lessons here. So just continuing a little with that Sadhu Sangashtaka, 8 verses about the sadhu. So the way one becomes tolerant and merciful and friendly to all is by becoming a pure devotee. And he describes that. Maya Ananyena Bhavena Bhaktim Kurvanti Yedridham, with great determination, without any deviation. This is what pure unflinching devotion. This is pure devotion. And then Bhaktim Kurvanti Yedridham. Matkute Tekta Karmanas Tekta Swajana Bandhava. So what's the symptoms? they'll give up any activity that's impediment to devotional service. Right? Just like we have the 4 regular principles. You want to become a devotee, fine. Chant Hare Krishna. You want to live in the ashram and really get serious, then you have to no illicit sex, no gambling, no intoxication, no meat eating. And which some find impossible. That famous story of Prabhupada with the Marquis, he called him the Marquis of Jetland, who wanted to become a Brahmin. You know, Prabhupada's godbrothers were there and they were meeting these royalty. Can you make me a Brahmin? Of course, no problem. Just give up these 4 things. And what was the answer? Impossible. Impossible. It's impossible. It's impossible if you want to, have it both ways. I know sense gratification is pleasant, so I'll keep that, and then I'll become a Brahmin and people will respect me. No, it doesn't work that way. Sorry. So, but it is possible for those who are serious about Krishna consciousness and want to and surrender to the guru, authority. All right, I'm going to do it, and I'll chant Hare Krishna to get the strength. So it's difficult at first, give up some of these things, obviously, but at a certain point, it's not difficult. Prabhupada, with his supreme intelligence, he knew that the beginning will be that the tongue is always the hardest to control. So we'll give him this exquisite prasad. And Prabhupada was such a great cook. He would cook for those first Sunday feasts in the storefront, and it was just, you can imagine how overwhelming that was. So that was a very important thing, because the tongue, if you can control the tongue, all the other senses can be controlled. So he's giving this prasadam, and you can understand. Okay, they're getting the holy name. The storefront is full of guests, right? And they just had wonderful kirtan and a talk, and now comes the prasadam. I think there's another kirtan after it. And they're attracted to the prasadam. Philosophy is a little hard to understand. I chant a little bit. I'm not sure what that's all about. So they come. They come. It was interesting. I know that feast was great. So I'll come back next week for the feast. So they keep coming back. I don't know about you, but that was an important part of me, coming back to the temple and getting the association of devotees. And then the key is, get a book. When you get a book and you really start reading it, then you're getting Prabhupada's association in the most important way, which is also part of the Sadhu Sangashtaka. Because he goes on describing how the next verse is how the benefits of this absorption in Krishna service. What's the main part of it? Madashya katamrishta shinbandi katayanti cha tapandi vivadastapanaitan mankata chetasa. So what are the activities of these devotees? Well, the most important is that they're always hearing and chanting talks and vibrations about me. The word Madashriya here means in relation to Krishna. Sound that has taken the shelter of Krishna, it's kind of poetic. Madashriya Kratam Rishta, which is very sweet to hear, it's very attractive. Shinvandikti, and because of that, Tapandi Bevadastapan, the miseries of this material world, the difficulties which come for everybody, don't affect them as much, because they're absorbed in thought of me. And Prabhupada gave an interesting example of this in the lecture, of someone who was able to tolerate what would ordinarily be very painful, because his mind was absorbed elsewhere. Not a devotee, just the opposite. Stalin, the dictator in Russia. He had read something somewhere where he needed to have an operation on his stomach, And so the doctor wanted to put him under, of anesthesia. But Stalin was paranoid, for good reason, that they wanted to assassinate him, So he said, no, forget about that. You can just do it. So somehow he was able to fix his mind, and he had an operation and, tough it out. So this is an example. But more, on the football field, you get an injury, but you're in the middle of it, you don't even feel it till after the game, stuff like that. Your mind is absorbed elsewhere. So the devotees who are so absorbed and always thinking of Krishna, they understand there's pain in the body, but they don't feel as disturbed by it, because they're completely absorbed in Krishna. So this is how you tolerate. So it goes on like that, and then after a couple of verses, he comes to this key verse in the whole Bhagavatam. It's practically the description of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Satam prasangan mama virya samvido bhavanti ritkarna rasayana katha tadjoshanat ashu apavarga vartmani shraddha ratir bhaktiranu kramishyati. 325-25, if you're ever interested in memorizing it. So satam, with the devotees, prasangan, here's the word again, prasangan. Not the tight bonds that are binding you to this material world, but very meaningful association with pure devotees, which means hearing with great attention and following the instruction. Guru mukha padma vakya chitte te koriya aikya. I always think that's the most important line in that song. Guru mukha padma vakya. The words emanating from the lotus mount of the Guru, make them one with your heart, and don't desire anything else. Don't desire any other words. That's the key, is to absorb oneself in the Baba's written words, hearing words, devotees, explaining. Those vibrations are our shelter. And the most important, of course, is Hare Krishna mantra. We should hear with great attention and absorb in the kirtan. So make it that's what this verse is all about. That with prasangan, association, meaningful association, desiring to perform the most important service of hearing, which leads to all the other services. Mama virya samvida. What are they going to hear? It's Kapila Dev speaking. They're going to hear my powerful activities, descriptions of my glories. Conversation, samvida, which is bhavanti ritkana rasayana, which results in a flow of rasayana, which is a life-giving elixir, ambrosia, which is pleasing to the ear and the heart and the mind. Like rasayana tajoshanat ashu, satamba mamavis bhavanti ritkarna rasayana, for the heart and for the ear, great pleasure, you see. And the pleasure is so great that you don't want anything else. You don't want anything else, and you're not disturbed by anything else. Lord Chaitanya, read the CC, they would go on all night, until finally the sun would rise and Lord Chaitanya would need to perform his morning duties or something. Go throughout the night hearing these things. And nobody was, saying, okay, I got to take rest. No. So practicing this process of simply coming together with devotees, kirtan, hearing the glories of the Lord, ashu, very quickly, apavarga vartmani, the path of liberation from this material world. One develops these three things, and these are like key to our development. Shraddha, your faith in the process, in Krishna, in your faith that you can do it, because you're feeling attracted, you're feeling less attracted to material life. That's another part of faith. Yeah, it's all very wonderful, but I don't think I could do it. It's too difficult for me. No, that's part of faith. Is yes, I can do it because I can be empowered in order to give up these things and take these things. Shraddha, rati, attraction to Krishna, and bhakti, which here means pure bhakti or prema bhakti. Shraddha rati bhakti anukramishati, step by step they develop. So this is a wonderful part of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and that you can see how that Prabhupada practically, and he describes it in these lectures. I highly recommend them. I think 1974 in Bombay, and he's in the middle of the fight, to get to land. So that's brought into the talk. It's very dramatic, And what can we do? We have to tolerate. Tatikshava karana. We can't do anything. You had the government against them, the whole thing. And it's such a struggle. It's wonderfully described in that book by Giriraj Swami, Albinua Temple. So, this is what the lessons that come from this pastime, is that by the process of surrender and purity, we can be empowered to tolerate the dualities of this world, and in fact to transcend the delusion of duality, because ultimately it's all a dream. This whole material world and the pains and the pleasures and all these different things, it's dreamlike, and that's what we've been hearing in previous verses, right? Is that, and I wanted to share with you this one verse that many of you heard before. That's in the Bhagavatam 4 times. 4 times this identical verse. So it's an important verse, right? So let me get the right. Oh, here it is. Yes. Yeah. 11th canto, 22nd chapter, 56th verse. This is one of the translation. Arteya vidyamane pi sangshatir nanavartate dhyayado vishayanasya swapne nartagamo yata. For one who is meditating on sense gratification, material life, although lacking factual existence, having the nature of a dream, does not go away, just as the unpleasant experience of a nightmare don't go away until you wake up. Right? That's the idea. God, I remember this lecture so much, this theme. The night dream and the daydream. The day seems like this reality. Oh, now that was just a dream. Now this is reality. No, this is also a dream. For the ordinary person. Wakes up and go to work and all these different things. Because it's all ephemeral. This is the whole point. Sat and asat. That which is asat, Prabhupada described it right in the Gita, in the second chapter. I forget which verse. Sat and asat, existing and non-existing. Now we know that, of course, this material world is real, so in that sense it exists, but it doesn't have the nature of spirit. Spirit doesn't change. Asat means it's always changing, and that which is always changing doesn't exist on the same level as that which is spirit. And so to get off of the asat platform, to get on the sat platform, that's the whole process of devotional service, of living on that platform and not acting on the basis of these temporary likes and dislikes and all of these things, these baggage that we carry, right? We have this whole subconscious we've built up over many lifetimes, and that's determining our activities, unless we get the association of a pure devotee. And we are able to take advantage of the chanting of the holy name. Because Krishna is so merciful. In this age, it's not possible to do the other kinds of yoga, really. Yes, Ashtanga yoga is a real thing, and you can get realization of the super soul, through that, But in this age, even Arjuna said he couldn't do it. So Lord Krishna comes as Lord Chaitanya to give the holy name, the process of Sankirtan. Yagya Sankirtana Praya Jantihi Sumedas, that those who are really intelligent will worship this incarnation Lord Chaitanya by the process of Sankirtan. And this is how, there's no hard and fast rules. There's no Deshakala Patra, oh no, this isn't the right time for Sankirtan, you're not the right candidate, sorry, you have to be born in a Brahmin family. No, it's open for everyone. What is that? Nam namakadi bahudani sar tatraibitani yamitak smarane nakala. There is no, restriction of time, and by implication, time, candidate, place, nothing like that. So what a wonderful gift! We can associate directly with Krishna through His holy name, and get purified. Purified of what? Of all the ignorance, of all the material desires, of all of the lack of faith, the doubts in the process. As soon as you're in a big kirtan, like a wonderful, Rath Yatra festival. That extended kirtan in front of Balaram, I stayed the whole time, So you're absorbed. Yes, it's a jagya, the heat and the whole thing, but you're feeling, what a blessing, what a benediction. Here I am pulling this rope, chanting in front of Balaram, and Jagannath later on, and it's all the gifts of the pure devotee who's just passing on the gift from Lord Chaitanya. So we have the opportunity to reach the platform here that Chitraketu reached, where the dualities of this world, and let's face it, I mean, this fire in Maui is a lesson. It's just, whoa, here, I mean, you always think of Hawaii. I've never been to Hawaii. Oh, what an ideal place, the weather is just right, the beaches are there, pristine and everything. And here comes this, conflagration. Instantly, there's over 100 people got burned to death. And they're still searching for him. Just horrible. That's the nature of this material world. I was reviewing my Tikevalashtaka, the 8 verses about the holy name, written by, it turns out we know, Nilakanta, an associate of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And these are 8 out of 100 he wrote in this. I don't know if you know that. I think they were pulled out by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. But one of them goes like this. I'll give you the Sanskrit and English. It's very short. Nishvase nahi vishvaso kadarudho bhavishyati kirtani matabalyad hare namaiva kevalam. Remember that our final breath may come at any time, no matter if we're old and sick or in our youthful prime. So young and old alike should chant the name incessantly. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. So are we ready? I mean, anything can happen at any time in this crazy world. I'll tell you frankly, I was worried about the Ratha Yatra because every day, practically every day, there's some nut who gets hold of a gun. Everybody can get a gun, you know, and starts shooting in some, you know, either on the street or in a school or wherever people gather. So we had a whole bunch of people gathered for the Ratha Yatra. Who knows, you know? So some guy may think, oh, these are heathens, you know, boom, you shoot. Could have happened. Of course, thankfully, nothing like that happened. Krishna protected. But we've seen it, and you know, there have been disasters. Devotees have died of COVID, and they come down by planes. So we're not immune to that. So therefore, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. We should try to chant as much, you know, constantly. That's the ideal, ultimate ideal. So we're ready for it, you know. Ready to call out to Krishna from the bottom of our heart. Krishna, save me on the plane, you know. So anyway, this is a very instructive passage. I always thought when I first read this back in the 70s, what a wonderful movie it would make. You know, there's so much drama here, you know, and everything. But it's the pages of the Bhagavatam with Prabhupada's purports are much better than that. And you know, we're going to. Did I mention this? In a few verses, we'll hear that famous verse by Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is speaking. Narayana Paratsave Nakutashana Bibbidi Svarga Bhavaga Nadakesha Pitulyarta Darshanam. That for those who are Narayana Parayana, mean that they're totally dedicated to Narayan Krishna. It's a famous phrase, or Narayana Para, same thing. Narayana Paratsave Nakutashana Bibbidi. They don't fear anything. Svarga Apavarga Nadakeshu. The heavenly planets, liberation, Apavarga, or hell, are all the same. Their vision is the same. Wherever you put me in hell, I'll keep chanting Hare Krishna. In heaven, I'm going to keep chanting. Parikat's coming, the snake bird, bring it on, you know. But just keep chanting. Remember that famous verse like that? I forget the Sanskrit. I don't care, let the snake bird or whatever the Brahmin invoked bite me now. But all sages, Shukadev, please keep chanting the glories of the Lord. Right? So if we can remain absorbed in the transcendental sound, that's really our shelter. And take full shelter of the wonderful prayers. There's so many prayers in the Bhagavatam that we can utter. I mean, Queen Kunti, I love her prayers, Prabhupada. Tvayame nannivishaya mati madapate sakrit ratamud bhatara dha gange vaugamadhanvati. O Madhu's Lord, or O Madhava, please ever fill my mind with thoughts of thee, not any other kind. As Ganges torrent flows into the sea, let all my love flow constantly to thee. What can be a better prayer than that? So, I'm sorry, I went on a little long. Any comments, questions? Yeah, just get in the mic. Yeah, just press the button until it goes on. Press it, hold it.
Thank you for your lecture. I have a question. You told a few times about this absorption in transcendental sound. How we can attain this absorption in our practice?
Yeah, that's a $64 question, isn't it? Well, I'll share a prayer with you. Prayer is really the essence, because the Hare Krishna mantra is a prayer. So to chant the Hare Krishna mantra prayerfully. I was once at a japa retreat. Have you ever heard of these? They used to go on in the early aughts. Satyanandan Swami would run. He started running, and then they started running them here without him. And one of the days is 64 rounds. I think it was the first day I ever chanted 64 rounds. You know, it's quite a juggy. You know, on and on and on. And you're chanting, I was chanting, it's getting toward noon, still chanting. And I was thinking, as you go through the chanting, how you can pray to the name, through the name. What are you praying for? All the things that you don't have, perfect remembrance, right? You don't want to forget. Let me have greater taste for you. There are prayers like that, Narada vino jivana sadormi niryasamadari pura tam Krishna nama kamam spadame rasane rasena sadad. This is the last verse of the Namashtaka. And he says, oh, Narada, you, oh holy name, you are the inspiration for the Vina of Narada. Narada vino jivana sudormi niryasamadari pura. And you are the essence of the thick sweetness of the nectar of rasa. This is where this devotee Madhuri Pura, who's a wonderful kirtan, he came from this verse. It's in the verse. Madhuri Pura, a flood of sweetness. Tvam Krishna nama kamam. If you please, the word kamam here, means if you please. Always make, let me always chant you so that my tongue is always feeling relish in chanting you. Let me have more taste for you. And this is another one in that same verse. He gives a sample of names. Agadamana, Yashodanandana, Nandasuna, Kamalanayana, Gopi Chandra, Vrindavanendra, and then I love this one, Pranata Karuna, you who are most compassionate to the surrendered souls. Pranata Karuna Krishna, Vityaneka Surupe, Tvai Mamadadachai Vardatam Namadeya. This is the perfect prayer for you. Killer of Agasra, beloved son of Yashoda Ananda, you of the lotus eyes and the moon that makes the gopi's eyes blossom when you come out, Gopi Chandra, Vrindavan and your Lord of Vrindavan. Oh, most merciful to the surrendered souls. Oh, Krishna, you have many forms. You say to the names, these are names. Oh, name, you have many forms. These are some samples. Aneka, you have unlimited. Aneka Surupi. Tvai Mamadadaduchai Vardatam Namade. This word Vardada in Govardhana means nourish. Please nourish my attraction for you. In other words, increase my attraction for you more and more. Okay. There's one other prayer, just in attraction to Krishna Katha in general. This is in a work called the Leela Chanda, which is a beautiful series of verses by Rupa Goswami summarizing Krishna's Vrindavan Leela, and it's in the Veda base. I put it up there at the Veda base. And one of the prayers, after each pastime, he has a couple of prayers that relate to the pastime. So this comes after one of the first pastimes. Krishna's still a calf herd, So he says, Api spada mode patibada sudha koti modode pudana gramanda bahadita balila rasajade mano vatsak patam vishaya vishagade vishati me kripa yashchatu nam dhamayatamamam dharnikapate. So I'll give a summary of the translation. He says, my dear Lord, although the wonderful, fragrant, tasty river of your Leela are flowing throughout the Puranas headed by the Bhagavatam, still, the foolish calf of my mind has wandered away from that river, that stream, and has gone into a ditch to drink the poisonous swill of sense gratification. So, oh calf herd, chief of the calf herds, Krishna, please take your stick of mercy and bring the calf of my mind back to that wonderful stream of your Krishna Katha. So these prayers, are specifically written there to give us ways of vocalizing this desire that you had. How can we get that absorption? By really wanting it and absorbing ourselves at the beginning in that desire and offering a prayer. That's why these prayers. What do the devotees pray for? We don't pray for going to heaven. We don't pray for anything material. We pray for purity and devotion, for advancement. So the basic answer, my answer is through prayer, through ardent prayer. Because the whole thing depends on desire. What is that famous verse? Krishna Bhakti Dasa Bhavitamati Kriyatam Yadikatopi Labbite Tattalayamati Mulyamekalam Janmakoti Sukatayana Labbite. This verse was composed by Ramananda Roy and included in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Rupa Goswami. It's not by Rupa Goswami. And so, what does he say? Prabhupada took that first line, and you know what he translated it as? Krishna consciousness. He says that on the tape. So that's where the word Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavatamati, the mind absorbed in Krishna Bhakti Rasa. That's what we're looking for. That's what we want, right? No deviation. Kriyatam. So if you can buy it, somewhere, you should buy it. Okay, what's the price? There's only one price. Your greed for it, your desire for it. There's once a movie long ago, I think before I joined, I saw this. One of the themes was greed is good. It was all about the stock market and everything. Anyway, this greed is good. Greed for this. So your absolute, desire, but to cultivate that greed, you can hang out, associate with devotees and everything. Read, but to find these prayers, offer them. There's so many in Bhagavatam, and to chant prayerfully. Desire, oh Lord, when will I have such a taste for your name that the tears will be flowing down? I mean, this is Lord Chaitanya's in Shikshastika. So it works in such a way that even if you don't feel it right now, if you still utter the prayer, the mind is such that it'll take on the mood of the meaning of the words. This is one of the wonderful things about the sound vibration. Why it's so key is that by repeating and hearing again, then your mind changes and you're able to do it. So I would say through ardent prayer, and I can help you, show you so many nice more prayers. And I can train you up in chanting the Sanskrit. The Sanskrit is very powerful. Yeah. Especially. Okay, it's kind of late. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for your attention.
When Lord Chaitanya was alive on the planet,
When he was present on the planet, yeah.
how long or how often was he in ecstasy? How often was he chanting and singing and dancing? How did he start doing that?
He was always in ecstasy, but he displayed it in different ways, and depends on how he would express that. You would have to talk about different parts of his manifestation. When he went to Puri, he took sannyas, renunciation. He was a householder, and he had his mother with him and his wife and everything. But he was still doing Harinam. He started it then in Navadvip. But then he took sannyas, which is renunciation. He left, and he went traveling to South India, and at that he was always in ecstasy. He was manifesting it in different ways, through the chanting and through speaking with his intimate friends, And he would write. He wrote the Shikshastika. So he was 100%. He's God. He's Krishna. So why would he say, well, I don't want to be in ecstasy now? No. He's always in bliss. But what the wonderful thing is, he was just an ocean of compassion. And he predicted that this would come around the world. And he would go out, amongst people who weren't devotees, and he would show them how to chant, and he would have a big feast that he would give, So he would, out of great compassion, he shared it with everyone, and he predicted it would go all over the world. And Srila Prabhupada worked hard to fulfill that prediction. So, have you got one of our little books yet?
No.
You got one already. Okay, read that. We have, by the way, we have classes every night. They're free, 7:15, in the Bhagavad Gita, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So if you have time, come on by.
Yeah, I get that. I grew up in the Christian tradition and used to go to church, and some of the churches had a lot of praise music, and you could feel the...
Praise music, yes, you can.
real.
Same thing.
The thing that always got me after a while was that they would do it for like a half hour, an hour, but then as soon as the clock hit a certain time, they would just stop.
Uh-huh.
And thought it was kind of weird because you're going to this high state of joy, and then all of a sudden, some of